You think pork chops in 1960s black households were just fried meat with gravy? Think again. African American mothers transformed this affordable cut into some of the most creative and deeply comforting meals in American kitchen history. Here are 30 cheap pork chop meals that 1960s kids begged for. Smothered pork chops with onion gravy was the Sunday dinner that brought entire families rushing to the table before the blessing was finished. Black mothers seasoned bone and chops with salt, pepper, and garlic powder, dredged them in flour, and browned them golden in cast iron. The magic came when sliced onions were added to the drippings and cooked until soft and sweet. Broth was poured in to create thick, savory gravy that bubbled as the chops simmered beneath it. The meat became so tender it fell off the bone, soaking up every drop of that silky sauce. Served over rice or mashed potatoes, this dish stretched one package of pork chops into a feast that fed six with seconds to spare. Children would sop up the last of the gravy with bread, unwilling to let a single drop go to waste. Baked pork chops with rice was the weeknight miracle that freed mothers from standing over hot stoves while still delivering meals that tasted like hours of effort. Seasoned pork chops were laid over uncooked rice in a baking dish, then covered with cream of mushroom soup diluted with water. As the dish baked, the rice absorbed all the liquid and flavors from the meat, becoming tender and savory. The chops cooked to perfection on top, edges caramelized where they met the bubbling sauce. This one-dish meal meant fewer pots to wash and more time for helping with homework or other household tasks. Children loved the creamy rice that clung to the chops, and fathers appreciated coming home to hot meals requiring nothing more than setting the table. Efficiency and comfort married together in a single casserole. Pork chops and cabbage proved Black mothers could make a dollar stretch further than anyone thought possible. Thick-cut chops were browned until they developed deep golden crust, then nestled into beds of sliced cabbage, onions, and carrots, seasoned with salt and smoked paprika. Everything simmered together in covered pots, the cabbage softening and sweetening as it absorbed rendered pork fat. The result was tender vegetables that tasted almost buttery despite having little added fat, surrounding chops that remained juicy from slow cooking. A head of cabbage cost nearly nothing and could feed an army when paired with meat. This dish appeared on tables throughout the week, reheated and somehow tasting even better as flavors continued developing overnight. It was poverty transformed into abundance through skill and patience. Fried pork chops with sawmill gravy was breakfast royalty in Black Southern households. Thin-cut chops were seasoned heavily with salt and pepper, dredged in flour, and fried until the coating turned crispy. The treasure came from what remained in the pan afterward. Mothers added flour to hot drippings, stirring until it browned slightly and smelled of toasted nuttiness. Milk was poured in slowly, whisked until it transformed into thick, peppery gravy. This gravy was ladled over chops and split biscuits, creating plates so rich that children cleaned every crumb. The combination of crispy pork, creamy gravy, and tender biscuits sustained workers through long mornings and gave children energy for school. It cost almost nothing, but delivered pure luxury that made ordinary mornings feel like celebrations. Pork chop and potato casserole was comfort food architecture, built layer by layer with simple ingredients that transformed into something extraordinary. Raw potato slices were arranged in greased baking dishes, seasoned, then topped with onions and pork chops. Cream of celery soup mixed with milk was poured over everything, creating sauce that bubbled and thickened as it baked. The potatoes cooked slowly in creamy liquid becoming soft and infused with pork flavor, while the chops roasted until edges crisped. Families gathered as casseroles emerged from ovens, surfaces golden and bubbling with promise. Each serving contained perfectly cooked pork, tender potatoes, and rich sauce, tying everything together. This was the kind of meal that stretched 4 pork chops into dinner for 8, with potatoes making every portion feel generous. Pork chops with lima beans was a combination that made perfect sense to mothers stretching budgets during the 1960s. Dried lima beans were soaked overnight and simmered with ham hocks to build flavorful bases. Browned pork chops were added during the final hour, finishing in bean liquid while contributing their own fat and flavor. The lima beans turned creamy and rich, their texture almost velvety against the firm bite of pork. This was a complete meal in a single pot, providing protein from both beans and meat, making it nutritious as well as economical. Children who claimed to hate lima beans ate them eagerly when they tasted like pork and smelled like Sunday dinner. The dish represented the ingenuity of making ingredients work together to elevate both beyond what either could achieve alone. Pork chops and sauerkraut reflected the blending of cultures in American neighborhoods where Black and German families lived side by side. Browned pork chops were layered with drained sauerkraut in Dutch ovens, then covered and simmered until the meat became fork tender. The tangy sourness of fermented cabbage cut through the richness of pork, creating balance that made each bite interesting. Some mothers added caraway seeds, brown sugar, or sliced apples to customize flavor. The dish was economical because sauerkraut cost pennies and added volume to stretch meat further. Children who were skeptical at first often became devoted fans once they tasted how tanginess complemented savory pork. Served with boiled potatoes or bread for soaking up juices, this dinner filled bellies and warmed spirits on cold evenings. Stuffed pork chops were the special occasion version of everyday dinners, reserved for birthdays, holidays, or when company came calling. Thick-cut chops were sliced horizontally to create pockets, which mothers filled with seasoned breadcrumbs, celery, onions, and sage. The stuffed chops were browned in skillets, then transferred to ovens until filling cooked through and meat was tender. The presentation was impressive, each chop appearing twice as large thanks to stuffing bulging from within. Children felt special eating food that looked like it belonged in restaurants rather than home kitchens. The stuffing absorbed juices from pork as it cooked, becoming moist and flavorful while adding texture contrast. This dish proved budget cooking could still feel elegant and celebratory when prepared with care and creativity. Pork chops with tomatoes and peppers was a summer dish, making use of garden abundance while keeping meals affordable and bright. Fresh tomatoes were sliced thickly, while bell peppers were cut into strips, both vegetables seasoned simply. Browned pork chops were arranged in baking dishes and covered with vegetables, which released juices as everything roasted together. The tomatoes broke down into natural sauce that bathed pork in sweet acidity, while peppers added color and sweetness. This tasted like summer itself, fresh and vibrant despite requiring minimal effort. Mothers loved it because vegetables came from backyard gardens or were purchased cheaply at peak season. Children loved how sweet peppers and tangy tomatoes transformed ordinary pork chops into something brighter and more exciting than usual preparations. Smoked pork chops with black-eyed peas carry deep cultural significance while remaining one of the most economical meals mothers could prepare. Smoked chops, already cured and flavored, were simmered slowly with dried black-eyed peas soaked overnight. The peas absorbed smoky essence of meat, turning each bite into concentrated southern flavor. Onions, garlic, and bay leaves were added, along with enough water to keep everything submerged as it cooked. By the time peas were tender and creamy, the chops had given up smokiness to the entire pot. This dish appeared on New Year's Day tables for luck, but was welcome any day when budgets were tight. The combination of pork and peas provided complete protein, making it nutritious as well as filling. Served with cornbread for sopping, it satisfied completely. Pork chops with sweet potatoes brought together two affordable ingredients into something that tasted like autumn celebration. Browned chops were arranged in baking dishes alongside thick rounds of sweet potatoes, both seasoned with cinnamon, brown, sugar, and butter. As the dish baked, sweet potatoes caramelized while releasing sugars that mingle with pork drippings. The meat absorbed hints of sweetness while remaining savory and tender. This combination appeared on tables throughout fall and winter when sweet potatoes were plentiful and cheap. The natural sweetness meant less added sugar was needed, making it economical and healthier than it tasted. Families scraped plates clean, mixing caramelized sweet potato with every bite of pork. Children loved the sweetness, overcoming any objections to vegetables. Pork chop stew was the answer when mothers needed to stretch 2 or 3 chops into dinner for a crowd. Chops were cut into chunks, browned thoroughly, then simmered in large pots with potatoes, carrots, celery, and onions in seasoned broth. Hours of slow cooking transformed tough cuts into tender morsels, while vegetables absorbed rich pork flavor. The broth thickened naturally from starches released by potatoes, creating silky gravy without added flour. This meal improved with each reheating, flavors deepening overnight in the refrigerator. Mothers made it on Mondays, knowing it would provide dinners through Wednesday. Children loved fishing through stew to find meat chunks, while adults appreciated how filling each bowl became with crusty bread alongside. It was poverty cooking elevated to art form. Pork chops with greens combined protein with vitamins in one pot of pure Southern comfort. Collard or mustard greens were cleaned, stripped from stems, and chopped before being added to pots where brown chops waited in seasoned water. The greens cooked down dramatically, releasing slight bitterness into liquid that became deeply flavored pot liquor. The chops simmered alongside, their fat rendering into greens and making them silky and rich. Vinegar and crushed red pepper added brightness and heat-balancing earthiness. This dish was nutritional wisdom passed through generations, providing iron, vitamins, and protein in combinations, keeping families healthy on tight budgets. The Potlikker alone was considered medicine, sipped from cups alongside cornbread for strength. Pork chops and brown gravy was a weeknight staple requiring nothing fancy, but delivering satisfaction, rivaling Sunday dinner. Seasoned chops were dredged in flour and browned until crusty, then removed while mothers built gravy from drippings. Flour was stirred into fat, cooked until darkened slightly, then beef broth added gradually while whisking constantly. The chops returned to simmer in rich brown gravy until tender and sauce thickened to coat a spoon. Served over egg noodles, rice, or mashed potatoes, this was comfort food at its most elemental. The gravy stretched meat, making 4 chops feed 6 easily, with starch soaking up every drop. Children who refused vegetables ate this without complaint, parents knowing they were getting protein and satisfaction for pennies. Breaded pork chops were the crispy alternative satisfying children who wanted crunch with every bite. Thin chops were dipped in beaten egg, then pressed into seasoned breadcrumbs or crushed crackers before being fried until golden brown. The coating sealed in juices while developing a shell that shattered pleasantly against teeth. These could be eaten with hands like chicken, making them favorites at informal dinners and packed lunches. Mothers often doubled recipes, knowing extras would disappear as snacks before bedtime. The breading stretched meat visually, making portions appear larger and more generous. Served with applesauce for dipping, these chops bridged the gap between everyday dinner and special treat. The crunch was the whole point, delivering textural satisfaction alongside savory pork flavor. Pork chops with gravy and biscuits was Sunday supper reduced to its most essential and beloved elements. Bone-in chops were fried until golden, then simmered in cream gravy made from pan drippings, flour, and milk seasoned with black pepper. Fresh biscuits baked alongside in the same oven, emerging golden and fluffy as pork finished cooking. The meal was assembled family style, with biscuits split and covered with chops and gravy ladled over everything. Children learned to make wells and biscuits to hold extra gravy, not letting a drop escape. This was church supper food appearing at potlucks and homecomings across the South. It required only pantry staples and inexpensive meat, yet delivered satisfaction usually reserved for holidays when mothers showed love through abundance. Pork chops with applesauce was a complete cooking method, keeping meat moist while adding natural sweetness. Browned chops were arranged in baking dishes and covered with homemade or canned applesauce before baking until tender. The applesauce created protective layers, preventing meat from drying while infusing it with subtle fruit flavor. Some mothers added cinnamon or nutmeg, while others kept it plain, letting pork dominate. Children loved sweetness, making dinner feel like dessert, eating every bit of sauce alongside meat. The dish was economical because applesauce cost less than fresh apples and lasted longer in pantries. This combination had German and Pennsylvania Dutch origins, but was embraced in Black Southern kitchens where it became regular rotation meal loved by all ages. Pork chop sandwiches were the lunch counter favorite, recreated at home for a fraction of restaurant prices. Thin-cut chops were pounded thinner, seasoned, and fried quickly until just cooked through, then placed on soft buns with pickles, onions, and mustard. The chops hung over bread edges, making sandwiches look impossibly generous despite using modest portions of meat. Children begged for these on Saturday afternoons, eating them hot from skillets while standing at kitchen counters. The combination of crispy meat edges, soft bread, and tangy pickles was addictive in ways fancier meals couldn't match. Mothers appreciated how quickly they came together and how completely they satisfied hungry families. These sandwiches stretched 4 chops into meals for 6, with bread and toppings adding substance. Pork chops with yams and molasses connected 1960s tables to generations of African American cooking traditions. Thick chops were browned and arranged with peeled yam chunks, then drizzled with molasses and dotted with butter before baking. The molasses caramelized, creating sticky glaze, coating both meat and vegetable in deep sweetness. The yams absorbed pork drippings while softening into creamy texture, their sugars enhanced by molasses. This was holiday food made accessible for regular weeknights, bringing celebration to Tuesday dinners. Children cleaned plates without being asked. The dish represented culinary heritage, connecting families to foodways stretching through slavery and beyond, to African roots, where yams were sacred staples carrying spiritual meaning. Pork chops and navy beans was a protein-packed meal, costing almost nothing yet, delivering satisfaction of much more expensive dinners. Dried navy beans were soaked overnight and simmered for hours with onions, garlic, and bay leaves until breaking down into creamy consistency. Browned pork chops were added during the final hour, their fat-enriching bean broth while meat absorbed earthy bean tastes. The beans thickened naturally into rich sauce, clinging to tender chops. This was Monday meal planning at its finest, using weekend time to create weeknight abundance. Served with cornbread and hot sauce, it was simple food children remember decades later as examples of their mother's kitchen wisdom. The meal represented love made edible through patience and skill. Pork chops with butter beans brought together the creamiest of legumes with savory pork in one satisfying pot. Dried butter beans were soaked and simmered until breaking down into velvety softness, their natural starches thickening the liquid into rich broth. Browned pork chops were added near the end, contributing fat and flavor while finishing in the bean liquid. The butter beans melted on the tongue while pork remained firm and meaty, creating texture contrast that made each bite interesting. This was affordable eating at its finest, with dried beans costing pennies and stretching meat into multiple servings. Mothers made large batches, knowing leftovers improved overnight. The dish represented Southern cooking wisdom about how humble ingredients become extraordinary with patience. Smothered pork chops with mushrooms was the dressed-up version of everyday smothered chops, reserved for when families wanted something a little special. Canned or fresh mushrooms were sautéed with onions in the same skillets where chops had been, browned, absorbing all the rendered fat and fond from the pan. Cream of mushroom soup was added to create gravy that was rich, earthy, and deeply savory. The chops returned to simmer in this mushroom-studded sauce until tender throughout. Children who thought they hated mushrooms often changed their minds when they tasted how the fungi melted into the gravy, adding umami depth without obvious texture. This dish proved that canned soup could be elevated into something genuinely delicious with the right technique and care. Pork chops and cornbread dressing was holiday cooking made accessible for any day of the week. Crumbled cornbread was mixed with sautéed celery, onions, sage, and broth to create stuffing that baked beneath brown pork chops in the same dish. The dressing absorbed drippings from the meat as everything cooked together, becoming moist and flavorful while the chops stayed tender on top. This was Thanksgiving dinner condensed into a weeknight meal, bringing celebration to ordinary Tuesday suppers. Children loved the combination of crispy pork edges and soft, savory dressing, often fighting over the corner pieces where everything got extra crispy. The dish stretched 2 or 3 chops into dinner for a family, with the dressing providing bulk and satisfaction. Pork chops with turnips was a dish that made use of one of the cheapest root vegetables available while delivering surprising sweetness and depth. Turnips were peeled and cubed, then added to pots where brown chops simmered in seasoned broth. The turnips absorbed pork flavor while cooking down into tender chunks that almost melted on the tongue. Their natural bitterness disappeared during long cooking, replaced by a subtle sweetness that complemented the savory meat. This was frugal cooking at its finest, turning vegetables that cost nearly nothing into something families genuinely enjoyed eating. Mothers learned this dish from their own mothers, passing down knowledge that humble ingredients deserved respect. Served with cornbread, it was a complete meal that satisfied without straining tight budgets. Pork chop and okra skillet was a one-pan wonder that brought together 2 Southern staples in a dish that was both practical and delicious. Sliced okra was added to skillets where brown chops rested, the vegetable cooking in rendered pork fat until it lost its sliminess and developed slight char. Tomatoes were often added, their acidity balancing the richness while creating natural sauce. The chops finished cooking surrounded by tender okra and tomato absorbing flavors from both. This was summer eating at its best, when okra was plentiful in gardens and cost nothing but the effort of picking. Children who usually avoided okra ate it eagerly when it was cooked this way, crispy edges hiding any texture they found objectionable. The dish required only one pan and minimal cleanup. Pork chops with macaroni was the ultimate budget stretcher, combining inexpensive pasta with affordable meat into a meal that satisfied the hungriest families. Browned chops were arranged over cooked macaroni in baking dishes, then covered with tomato sauce seasoned with onions, garlic, and herbs before baking until bubbly. The pasta absorbed the sauce and pork drippings, becoming rich and flavorful while the chops stayed moist on top. This was the kind of meal that made 4 chops feed 8 people, with the macaroni providing bulk that filled bellies completely. Children loved the combination of tender pasta and savory meat, often asking for seconds before adults had finished first. It was Italian-American influence filtered through Black Southern kitchens, creating something entirely new and delicious. Barbecue pork chops brought outdoor grilling flavor indoors for families without backyards or during winter months. Browned chops were covered with homemade or bottled barbecue sauce, then baked until the sauce caramelized into sticky glaze that coated the meat in sweet, tangy goodness. Some mothers made their own sauce from ketchup, vinegar, brown sugar, and spices, while others relied on store-bought varieties that worked just as well. The low oven temperature allowed chops to become tender while the sauce reduced and intensified. Children loved the sticky sweetness that made eating with fingers acceptable, licking sauce from their hands between bites. This was cookout food made accessible year-round, bringing summer celebration to winter tables when families craved brightness and flavor. Pork chops and field peas was a combination rooted deeply in Southern agricultural traditions where both ingredients were abundant and affordable. Fresh or dried field peas were simmered with ham hocks or bacon until tender, their cooking liquid becoming flavorful potlikker. Browned pork chops were added to finish cooking in this seasoned broth, absorbing earthy pea flavor while contributing their own richness to the pot. The field peas held their shape better than other legumes, providing texture contrast against the tender meat. This dish appeared on tables throughout summer when fresh peas were available and continued into winter using dried versions. It represented the connection between Black families and the land that sustained them through generations. Pork chops with fried apples was a dish balancing savory meat with sweet fruit in combinations that delighted children and adults alike. Apples were sliced and fried in butter with brown sugar and cinnamon until they softened and caramelized into sticky sweetness that glistened in the pan. Browned pork chops were served alongside or topped with these fried apples, the fruit's sugar cutting through the meat's richness perfectly. This combination had roots in German cooking, but was embraced fully in Black Southern kitchens, where it became a fall favorite when apples were cheap and plentiful. The dish appeared when orchards were at their peak, turning seasonal abundance into memorable family meals. Children especially loved the dessert-like sweetness that made vegetables unnecessary. Pork chops and rice, pilaf, elevated simple ingredients into something that felt fancy enough for company. Rice was sautéed with onions and garlic before being cooked in seasoned broth, each grain separate and flavorful. Browned pork chops were arranged on top and everything baked together until the rice absorbed the meat drippings and the chops became tender. The pilaf method transformed ordinary rice into something special, with toasted flavor and perfect texture that impressed guests and family alike. This dish proved that budget cooking could still be elegant when prepared with care and technique. Mothers saved this recipe for Sunday dinners or when relatives visited, knowing it would make them proud. Children learned that simple ingredients prepared well could rival expensive restaurant meals.
Fluffy biscuits with syrup or jelly were the breakfast treat 1960s kids begged for with wide eyes and hopeful voices, knowing their mother could see straight through them but might give in anyway. These biscuits were not the kind that popped out of a can. They were soft, hand-mixed, cut by a jar or a tin cup, and baked until their tops turned the faintest shade of gold. When they came out of the oven, the whole kitchen smelled like butter and warmth, the kind of smell that made children hover around the stove waiting for permission to grab one. Mothers split them open with their fingers, steam curling into the air, then drizzled syrup or spread jelly inside until the biscuit soaked up every bit of sweetness. Sometimes the syrup ran down the sides, and kids licked it from their hands without hesitation. These biscuits felt like a weekend, even on a weekday, like a celebration even when money was too tight for fancy breakfasts. Mothers made them because they filled stomachs and stretched ingredients, but children loved them because they tasted like happiness before school. As frozen biscuits and fast mornings took over, these tender homemade biscuits started to disappear. But for the generation who grew up on them, one bite still carries the memory of a warm kitchen, a busy mother moving with practiced grace, and the pure joy of getting the first biscuit straight from the pan. 7-Up cake was the bright citrus-soaked reunion classic that brought a cheerful spark to every dessert table thanks to its airy texture and lemon-lime sweetness. The batter mixed into a pale, silky pour that gained its lift from the soda folded carefully inside a trick that made the cake light, tender, and bursting with flavor. As it baked, the kitchen filled with a fresh citrus scent that felt like summer even on cloudy days, and children hovered near the oven, hoping the timer would ring early. When the cake cooled, it revealed soft golden curves shaped by the bundt pan, making it one of the most eye-catching desserts at any family gathering. A warm sugar glaze was poured over the top, soaking into every ridge and giving each bite a sweet, bright finish. Families looked for it at every reunion because it tasted like celebration without costing much to make. Each slice carried the memory of afternoons spent laughing outdoors and long tables full of food that brought people together year after year.
Candied yams with brown sugar glaze were the dish that made children hover near the kitchen door, waiting for that first sticky spoonful straight from the pan. Black mothers across the South would peel sweet potatoes by the dozen, slicing them into thick rounds before layering them in baking dishes passed down through generations. The magic happened when brown sugar, butter, cinnamon, and vanilla were melted together and poured over the potatoes before slow baking until the edges caramelized into chewy perfection. The smell alone could pull children from their beds on holiday mornings, sweet, warm, and promising something special.
Banana pudding with wafers was the chilled Christmas treasure children could barely wait for, especially when they knew it had been sitting in the fridge all night, getting better by the hour. Mothers layered vanilla wafers, sliced bananas, and warm homemade pudding in deep glass dishes, each layer sinking just slightly as the wafers softened into cake-like sweetness. The bowl went into the refrigerator covered tightly, and from that moment on, children opened the fridge door every 20 minutes just to look. By the next day, the pudding had turned silky, the bananas had sweetened, and the wafers had transformed into soft, creamy layers that tasted like pure comfort. When the dish was lifted out for Christmas dinner, everyone leaned in closer, waiting for the spoon to reveal that first perfect scoop. The smell alone, warm vanilla and banana, felt like a holiday hug. It was the dessert that never lasted long because children asked for seconds before their plates even touched the table. Banana pudding tasted like patience rewarded, Christmas excitement, and the magic of a dessert that only got better overnight. Fried cornbread patties made from hot water bread were the quick, crispy breakfast that came together in minutes. perfect for busy mothers who needed to feed many children before the day rushed in. Flour and cornmeal met boiling water until the mixture thickened into a dough that could be shaped right in the palm. The patties hit the skillet with a sizzle, frying in a thin layer of oil or bacon grease until the edges crisped and the centers stayed soft. Kids loved the sound as much as the taste. They begged for them with butter, with jelly, with a drizzle of cane syrup, or just plain hot from the skillet. These patties were the kind of food that taught children to appreciate texture. Crisp outside, tender inside, warm all the way through. Mothers made them without measuring because the recipe lived in their fingers, and every batch tasted slightly different depending on how much water or meal went in. Fried cornbread patties were fast, reliable, and comforting, the kind of breakfast that made sure no child walked out the door hungry. Even when grocery shelves brought new kinds of bread and packaged mixes, nothing matched the flavor of these simple patties eaten at the kitchen table while the morning light crept in. They tasted like survival, love, and tradition, all pressed into a single handful. Today, many children have never seen them cooked, but those who remember can still taste that first bite. The warmth, the crunch, the feeling of being cared for before the day even started. Sock it to me. Cake arrived at reunions in heavy bundt pans, carried carefully by aunties who knew the warm, spiced swirl inside would be gone before the day ended. The batter was mixed thick and smooth, then layered with a ribbon of cinnamon sugar and chopped nuts that baked into a hidden filling rich enough to earn its reputation. When the cake rose in the oven, the air filled with the scent of spice warmth and sweetness drifting through kitchens and across picnic shelters until people started asking who made it. Once cooled, it turned out beautifully with a golden crust and a tender crumb that sliced cleanly, revealing the dark sweet swirl inside. A simple glaze poured over the top gave it a soft shine and made each slice taste like something crafted with skill passed down over generations. Sock it to me cake became a reunion favorite because it felt special without being fussy, and because its comforting flavors made every person at the table feel welcome. Cocktail meatballs simmered in grape jelly and chili sauce created sweet, savory bites that children couldn't resist, the glossy sauce coating each meatball like candy while delivering unexpected flavors. Mothers would brown frozen meatballs in skillets before transferring them to slow cookers or pots where they simmered in a mixture of grape jelly and bottled chili sauce that melted together into a thick, shiny glaze. The combination sounded strange but tasted magical, the grape jelly's sweetness balancing the chili sauce's tang and creating a flavor profile that kept people reaching for more. As the meatballs simmered, they absorbed the sauce and became tender, the exterior developing a sticky coating that made them perfect for spearing with toothpicks. In Black households during the 1970s, these cocktail meatballs represented easy elegance, a recipe that seemed fancy but required minimal effort. Children loved them because they were bite-sized, required no cutting, and tasted like a sweet, savory treat. Hot buttered grits with sugar or cheese were the quiet heartbeat of many 1960s. Black kitchens, the kind of breakfast that slid into a bowl steaming and soft before the sun was fully up. Mothers stirred the pot slowly, scraping the bottom so nothing stuck, adding butter until it melted into the grains like sunlight sinking into snow. Every child had a favorite version. Some begged for sugar because it made the bowl taste like dessert, warm and sweet and comforting on rushed school mornings. Others loved cheese melted in until the grits turned golden and stretchy, sticking to the spoon in a way that made the dish feel special. Even when money was tight, grits were cheap, filling, and steady, the kind of food that made sure no one walked out the door hungry. They tasted like warmth, like routine, like the kind of love that showed up before sunrise without ever being spoken aloud. As boxed cereals and toaster pastries crept into households, hot buttered grits started to slip out of daily life. But the memory never quite faded. Anyone who grew up eating them can still remember the heavy spoon, the soft steam hitting their face, the way Mama would say, "Eat this first so you do not get hungry in class." One bowl was enough to carry a child through a long bus ride, a long school day, and sometimes a long walk home. It was breakfast built from care, tradition, and the need to stretch ingredients as far as they could go. And even now, one taste can bring back the sound of a kitchen waking up and the comfort of a mother moving quietly through the morning to make sure her children started the day with something warm in their stomachs. Pound cake plain or finished with a bright lemon glaze was the steady, dependable reunion dessert that anchored every long table and carried the taste of family history in every slice. Grandmothers mixed the batter by hand in large bowls, their movements slow and sure as they blended butter, sugar, eggs, and flour into a thick, smooth mixture that promised comfort long before it ever reached the oven. As it baked, the kitchen filled with a warm, sweet scent that drifted out the door and into the yard, pulling cousins and neighbors inside with the promise of something familiar. When the cake was finally unmolded, it stood tall and golden with a firm crumb that sliced cleanly and never crumbled, even when carried from house to car to reunion hall. Some families preferred it plain, letting its soft, buttery flavor shine, while others poured a glossy lemon glaze over the top, letting it drip down the sides and cling sweetly to the edges. Pound cake was beloved because it tasted like effort and patience, and because it fed a crowd without ever needing decoration. It traveled well, sat proudly on every dessert table, and never failed to disappear slice by slice as people passed by with paper plates in hand. It was not dramatic, but it was unforgettable because it tasted like home gathering stories and hands that knew exactly how long to beat the batter. Soya grits and ground beef skillet dinners were a product of the government era, when soy-based foods were sent to low-income households to stretch meat supplies. Mothers browned a small amount of beef, added the soya grits, and seasoned everything until it tasted far richer than it looked. Sometimes a handful of onions or peppers went in, or a bit of leftover broth to deepen the flavor. The mixture thickened into a hearty skillet meal that fed many children at once. Kids did not always know what was in it, but they knew it filled them up and tasted good with bread or rice. It had a creamy, savory texture that surprised families the first time they tried it. Mothers relied on it because it was reliable, cheap, and easy to adapt. Soya grits and ground beef skillets were resourcefulness at its most practical, proof that mothers could. Homemade buttermilk pancakes were the tall, fluffy stacks that made children race to the table before the first one even left the skillet. Mothers whisked the batter by hand, pouring it onto cast iron where bubbles rose through the surface like tiny promises. The pancakes cooked into thick, tender rounds, soft enough to soak up syrup but sturdy enough to hold butter melting across the top. Kids begged for extra because no two pancakes ever tasted exactly the same, and every batch felt like a gift made fresh. These pancakes beat diner versions every time because they tasted like home, like effort, like the quiet rhythm of a mother working before sunrise. Sometimes she added a little cinnamon, sometimes a splash more buttermilk, sometimes she cut them into halves for the younger ones. Each plate carried the same intention: fill their stomachs, start their day right, send them into the world with something warm inside. Pancake mornings were special, even when they were simple, and children looked forward to them more than anything in a box. As mixes and frozen pancakes took over kitchens, the homemade version faded, but anyone who remembers them can still taste the difference. Real batter, real heat, real love poured into every round. Peach cobbler was the bubbling reunion dessert that pulled people toward the kitchen long before the pan ever hit the table, filling the air with the smell of peaches, sugar, and warm spices. Whether made from fresh peaches in the summer or canned peaches during the rest of the year, the filling cooked down into a thick, golden mixture that tasted like sunshine and memory. The crust varied from family to family, sometimes a lattice, sometimes a full sheet of dough, sometimes spooned on like dumplings, but always baked until brown, crisp, and irresistible. When the cobbler came out of the oven, the juices bubbled around the edges, and the scent wrapped itself around the entire gathering, making people line up with bowls in hand. Served warm with melting ice cream, or on its own, it tasted like the heart of southern Sundays and long afternoons, spent talking, laughing, and passing plates across crowded tables. Peach cobbler was more than dessert. It was a tradition carried proudly by the cooks who prepared it year after year. Smoked frog legs provided unexpected protein from the marshes and bayous surrounding many southern plantations. Skilled foragers caught frogs at night with simple nets or by hand, cleaning the meaty hind legs and seasoning them with salt and wild herbs before smoking them slowly over hickory coals. The gentle smoke preserved the meat for days and gave it a rich, savory flavor that paired well with cornbread or greens. This practice echoed West African traditions of smoking small game and fish to ensure longevity in hot climates. After emancipation, smoked frog legs remained a regional delicacy in Louisiana and coastal communities, later becoming a celebrated dish in Cajun cuisine. They remind us that survival often required deep familiarity with the waterways and a willingness to turn overlooked resources into sustaining meals. Smoked frog legs stand as an example of how necessity and skill created flavors that outlasted hardship, transforming what began as a pragmatic hunt into a distinctive part of Southern culinary heritage and a taste still enjoyed today.
Memories from your family's kitchen. Drop it in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more forgotten flavors from Black households.